Lettuce tomato sandwich. It smells like bacon in here, doesn't
A
it?
little bit.
Yeah, because we just fried.
I'm here with Elaine Lamski on December 4th, 2017 at her home. And we'll start with when and where were you born?
I was born in Waco, Texas in April of 1944. And my mom's name was Margaret Lillian Thompson Cross, which she hated because too many names for the Czechs. And my dad was Jim Morgan Cross, or Jim M. Cross. My mom was a teacher. She taught home ec originally, but later in life she also taught special ed.
Oh, neat.
Yep, and my dad was in the Air Force for 20 years. And then he had a law degree, and when he got out of the Air Force, he became an attorney. And so I had actually heard of Omaha because he was in the JAG office in Omaha. And when we moved here, I actually thought Omaha was the capital of Nebraska because I'd never heard of Nebraska except for Omaha. And then I found out it was Lincoln. I had two sisters, but one died this past January, and I have two brothers. So originally there were five of us, and I'm the oldest. I met my husband in the Peace Corps in 1966. He was serving as an agricultural rural development person, and I was teaching in a secondary Catholic girls' school. We have two boys who are living, one in Omaha. He has 4 children, and another son who lives in Lincoln, the oldest, who has 3 little girls aged 7 to 1. We raised our children basically in Hastings. We moved here when the oldest was 4 and the littlest had his 2nd birthday. I never thought I'd live in one town that long because my dad was in the military and we moved every 3 or 4 years. But then we got here and ended up staying. My kids have never been involved like I have. Mm-hmm. I think they were too intimidated by me. So neither one of them have ever been very active. I have a saying right here that I think of every day. It says, "It is stupidity second to none to busy oneself with the correction of the world." But that has been one of my main objectives in life. I'm constantly trying to fix things.
Yeah.
So I had a happy childhood. We lived in Waco till I was 7. Then we moved to England, and I lived there for 3 years, and that was quite an experience. And then we moved to St. Louis and lived there for 4 years. So I got to see something besides the plains of Texas.
Yeah.
As a child, I wouldn't say I participated in a lot of activities. I was basically a reader. Mm-hmm. I was a little bit of a tomboy. I just played with my brothers and sisters, and we had friends in England. We did a lot of funny, strange things that kids don't do here. We used to walk to school and shoot marbles down the curbs.
Oh, fun.
Because that was... Mm-hmm. So when it wasn't, and if it was foggy, we would sometimes run into the lampposts because we couldn't see them. And then there were lots and lots of leaves out, so we had German Shepherd. We used to walk the German Shepherd, or he would drag us along, depending on how excited he got about things. I'd say my family was very middle class, maybe upper middle class, but not very upper. And in school, I was always a good student. I liked school. I played school with my brothers and sisters. That's probably how I finally figured out I was supposed to be a teacher. I didn't enjoy kindergarten because they colored a lot at that time, and I hated to color. So I got in trouble because they gave me this picture and I colored everything orange. And I kind of scribbled it. I still remember that, being in trouble for that. Because I could already read, and so I did all the reading for the reading group because I already knew how. Mm-hmm. And so I went to grade school basically in England. I went to a British school, which was very different from an American school, very different. I had a desk that had an inkwell, and people behind you sometimes dipped your pigtails in the ink for a joke. Oh, yes. So, and they posted grades on the door so you knew what your class rank was. And I was like 30-something when I first came in because there were 36 or 38 in the class. They had big classes.
Wow.
And that was like second grade. And then, but that was because we did pounds, shillings, and pence at that time, which is not the decimal system. Not that I was any good at it anyway, but that was an experience. But I was good at I was good at everything else but my math. And then finally I learned how to do that. We also learned all the parts of the bicycle because the bicycle was very important to the British at that time and still is. And we knew how to take it apart and put it together.
Well, that'd be good to know.
Yes, but I don't remember any of it. And we had sewing. I remember I learned to do different kinds of stitches. That was one of my classes, and this is all prior to 5th grade.
Oh,
But
wow.
that's come in handy because at least I know how to sew. So in St. Louis, that was kind of an interesting experience too because we went there after, my last year in England, we went to the base school with American kids because my mother thought we ought to learn how to use American money and American math on the decimal system. So fortunately we did do that, but I've been confused in math ever since.
Oh.
I've never gotten over the experience. Fractions did me in. So in St. Louis, I went to grade school, and that was all pretty normal, but they had a 7 through 12 high school at that time, and it was also the time of integration, and so we had black students at the school, but it wasn't by choice. They were bused there, and there was a lot of conflict, I guess, anxiety or anxious feelings. There were policemen in the halls because there were knives and things that were being carried around. And I remember that it was kind of it didn't weigh on me because in the service, we had black families and, all kinds of families. So it wasn't any big deal to me, but at the time it was very, what do I want to say, like about explosive, possibly. It was potentially a bad situation, so that's why they had the police there, but I never saw anything or experienced anything. And in fact, my 8th grade, I think it was 8th grade, or maybe 7th, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade science teacher who taught me how to dissect a frog was black. And I still remember him, Mr. Thomas. He was an outstanding science teacher. I decided to join the Peace Corps when I heard somewhere in here you talk about John F. Kennedy. My reaction to John F. Kennedy's speech is what inspired me to want to join the Peace Corps. We all the young kids my age, I was maybe 17, 18, were big JFK fans, and we all listened to every speech he made. And when he made that particular speech about serving your country, instead of figuring out what your country can do for you, what can you do for your country, that was it. So after I graduated from high school, I informed my mother that I was going to join the Peace Corps, and she said, well, I think you should wait till after college because you don't have any skills. You've been a waitress at Walgreens, and I don't think there's much call for waitresses. And you have a water safety instructor badge, and I don't think anybody needs swimming lessons either. So that's what she said to me. And I thought, well, that's true. So I thought, okay, I'll go to college. So then I did, went on to college, and I applied when I was a junior, but I didn't hear anything. And so I kind of forgot about it, that I had applied. I just forgot. I thought, oh, well, And then my mom called one weekend because I went to Texas Tech, and we lived in Abilene, which is about 160 miles, like Lincoln to here, to Hastings. And she said, you have an envelope, official government envelope, and I think it's something to do with the Peace Corps, and it says you're going to Nicaragua. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to Nicaragua, because I had studied, some Spanish in college. I studied French, Spanish, and German, and I thought, this will be great. Well, I got home that weekend and it said Nigeria. And none of us even knew we didn't know where Nigeria was.
Oh my.
So we had to look it up on the atlas, which nobody does anymore because we didn't have phones then.
Mm-hmm.
And I was super excited because I thought, oh boy, I'm going to Africa. So that was, then I knew for sure that I was going that following January to train, which I did. I trained in the Virgin Islands. And it was neat, but it was ideal for the program because we did the basic beginning training on St. Thomas. What was it? Not St. Thomas. What is it? Can't think of the St. I'll have to think about that. But we also we did our teaching experience in the British Virgin Islands, which was very, very similar, I found out later, to what I experienced in Africa. The schools are all little black kids, and they were open air, no windows, and just openings. They weren't glassed or anything, and goats wandered in and out, and bugs and other things, and it was just exactly it was very, very similar. So it was an excellent preparation for the volunteers who went to Nigeria. We were a big group. I don't know what else. Where am I? Oh, I was based in a little town called Enugu, which there was a war later, the Biafran War. Enugu was the capital of Biafra, and I was about 160 miles outside of Enugu in a little compound. They called it a compound. It wasn't a village at all. They were Catholic nuns, so it was a convent. And then they lived in the convent, and then there were the school grounds. And then I lived with a Canadian volunteer. They were called CUSO, but it was like the equivalent of Peace Corps. And so we had a brick house with a tin roof. And in the heavy rainy season, it was very, very noisy. And there were some African teachers as well, but they didn't I wasn't placed with them. They had a building, like a dormitory building, that was for all of them, and there were maybe 12 of them. So I think we had 200 girls, and there were like 14 of us teachers. And it was an excellent experience, and the nuns were tremendous ladies. They were hilarious because they all had they weren't called sisters, they were called mothers. Oh. So we had Mother John Bosco and Mother Frederick Mary, and Mother Teresa was the head of the convent. She was the, whatever you call it, the prior, not the prioress, but whatever. And she was there, and some were from England. Somebody was from Scotland. There were a couple from the United States. Mother John Bosco was one of them. But they would ride around on their bicycles in their long white habits. And I don't know how they kept from breaking their necks and getting those things dirty, but their habits were always sparkling white. And the dirt there is like Oklahoma. It's orange, clay, dusty, but they were always impeccable. Yep, really, really good gals. And the girls themselves some of them were much older. I had students who were in their 20s, who were this was a high school, because their families were wealthy and they could send them to school, and they wanted them educated so they could marry a chief or something like that. Oh. And so that was kind of interesting for me, that my students were sometimes older than I was. You want to stop it? Okay. So when I got there, I was assigned to teach English as a second language, because since Nigeria was a former British colony, their second language was English, and so that's what I taught. But their English was not very much like our language at all, and that was a really challenging experience for me, but also very, very interesting. And then I also taught French, because they did the same. They call it an O-level certificate, which is the same thing that British schools required of their secondary students. So these kids had to have a second or a foreign language, and French was it. And that was an interesting experience for me as well. What I was really happy about, but it was difficult for me, I had a textbook that was actually geared for Africans, which was very unusual. And that was the nuns doing. They must have selected it because it had vocabulary and situations that were actually African. They didn't talk about dishwashers and lawnmowers, which they didn't have. So that was useful. And then I had another little book that had like folk tales from their own culture. And that was, I kept those books because I liked them so well. And plus, it taught me a lot of vocabulary that was useful to me because after, so I taught French and English as a second language. And then I was telling you, I had only been there, well, I met Dale in '66, and we kind of started seeing each other a little bit. He was out in the bush, what they call the bush, in the middle of nowhere, because he was digging reservoirs, water reservoirs to hold water during the dry season so that they would have water to drink. And he lived in a tin shack, and that was really noisy when it rained, noisier than my house. And his bathroom was, because I had a bathroom, I mean, those nuns had everything put together, but his bathroom was out in the middle of nowhere, and it was a grass kind of shack with a one-holer in the middle, and it was full of spiders and other things. You had to watch for snakes. And there was a little path that had been beaten through the brush that you had to go through to it. So it was certainly not something you wanted to do at nighttime. However, that did happen on occasion. So in '67, the Igbo tribe, there's 3 basic tribes in Nigeria, the Hausa, the Yoruba, and the Igbo. And the Igbos were like the entrepreneur class. The Hausas are Muslim, and the Igbos are animist or Christian, and they decided to withdraw from Nigeria and become their own country. Well, that started a war. So then the Peace Corps had to evacuate everybody, and Dale, who had been there already, was on his 3rd year. Normal service is 2 years, but you can re-up for a 3rd year. So he had re-upped, which is good because otherwise I would never have met him. And he had the option to go home or finish his service somewhere else. So he was close to his finishing time, so he left. But the rest of us were still there, and we would get these messages over Voice of America. One time, I was sitting on the nuns' veranda, and we were playing Scrabble. And it came over Voice of America that the Peace Corps volunteers were being airlifted out of Nigeria, which of course put my mother in a major panic. So she called her senator and to find out what was going on, which I wasn't alarmed at all. I'm playing Scrabble and drinking lemonade. So that's how reliable the media can be. And so anyway, but we were told to pack a bag and be prepared to be picked up at any time. And we had several false alarms where we thought we were going to leave, but then finally the real one came. And they picked us up, took us down to Port Harcourt, which is south of the southern part of Nigeria, in the Bay of Biafra. And they packed us in with all of the other, there were tons of expatriates, but there were lots and lots and lots and lots of volunteers in Nigeria at the time. And so we got the hold of the ship, and what we had to eat was, because it took a week, was peanut butter sandwiches and hard-boiled eggs. And there's not very many bathrooms on this boat for all these people. Anyway, they took us to Ghana, offloaded the volunteers, and we were at the University of Accra, and where we got bed bugs. And we didn't know, well, everybody was itching, and we couldn't even figure out why, and then we did. And so a Peace Corps representative came to meet us, and he interviewed the volunteers to help them determine whether they would fit, because some people didn't have much time left, and some people like me had a whole year, and I decided that I would go to another country and finish my tour. And so I went to Chad, and Nigeria is a former British colony, Chad is a former French colony, so they said I had to be retrained. So they sent me to Dakar in Senegal, and I spent 6 weeks in Dakar training for Chad. which was a real experience for me because I was a French major in college and my French was just god awful because we never spoke it, we never did anything with it, and I'd been teaching it, which was fortunate because I had a few vocabulary words that were essential because Senegal is French speaking, second language, so yeah. And so anyway, that was very, very interesting, and it was good preparation. I got a plane after 6 weeks, dropped me off, and the capital used to be Fort Lamy. It's not that anymore. And so I'm at the airport, which is in the middle of the desert. There's nothing but sand out there. And I am, in my feeble French, wondering where the Peace Corps director is that's supposed to be picking me up. And I couldn't say phone book. I kept calling it a book of the phone, and those guys didn't understand me because it's a completely different word. Finally, I got the message across that I wanted the phone, and I called him, and he'd been taking a nap because everybody takes siestas because, I mean, even in Nigeria they did, but Chad is much hotter. And Nigeria, where I was semi-tropical, and Chad, where I was semi-arid. So it was very different. Anyway, he picked me up. I went to my assignment, which was Kumra, which was a little teeny, it was a village. And that was also very interesting because I lived in a village now. But I also, once again, had a concrete block house. I lived on the compound at the school. Chad was so poor, they had no Chadian teachers. They had African teachers, but they were from Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire and other French African countries because there were no Chadians educated to teach. So I was the only white female person on the compound, which was a boys' school, and I had been teaching in a girls' school. And this time I had like 5th grade. And it was very interesting because it was okay, but it was nothing to compare with what I'd come from with the nuns, where I could get materials and they took care of things. And my director was super nice, but they just didn't have the money. So that was an interesting experience. I found it very, very difficult to teach the little kids how to say the R, the English R. They'd always say bud instead of bird, bud. And it was probably a life changer for me, the whole Peace Corps experience, because that's in Chad I really learned to speak French, but it changed my perspective of the world because I went over there to help them, but what I found out was that I had a lot to learn, and that what we were trying to do was not wise because our way is not the only way, and it's not the best way actually for them. You need to work, and now I think the government has finally kind of figured that out, because in Nigeria, for example, Dale worked with heavy equipment. Well, they didn't know how to repair it or fix it, so if it went down or it went off the road or whatever, you'd drive around, you'd see these giant pieces of machinery being covered by lianas and other jungle vegetation because it went off the road or had an accident or something and it couldn't be repaired, so it just sat there. Yeah, so it was... Well, we changed. I mean, it really, you see that you can't, our way was not the best way. And so, anyway, so I taught for my year in Chad, and I made the community that I spent time with, they were Arabs, and they were also, there were two tribes there. The Bantu, who were little bitty short people, and then there was a Muslim tribe too. So you'd walk down the street, to some people you'd say good morning in the Bantu language, and to the other people who were always, you could tell because of the way they were dressed, you would say good morning in Arabic. So I learned how to say good morning in Arabic. And yeah, it was fun. And the climate was very different. Nigeria was hot, but it was hot and humid. And Chad was hot, but it was hot and dry. And I remember when I went to bed at night, the wood of my bed would be hot. That's how hot because I didn't have air conditioning in either place. And there were lots of mosquitoes. I did get malaria when I was in Nigeria, but I didn't realize I had gotten it because I didn't have an attack till I was in Chad, where I got really, really sick. But they had a doctor who was there for years and years and years. He was actually baby doctor. He delivered the women's babies. His name was Seymour. He was a fantastic guy. And so they took me out there, and he said, oh, yep, you've got malaria, but you didn't get it here because the mosquitoes are different. I mean, you can get it, malaria, but I didn't even know this. There's two kinds. There's one where you get every 48 hours, and there's one where you get it every 24 hours.
Oh.
And so, yeah. But anyway, he gave me what I needed to get over it, and then I never had any more problems with it until I came home. And then I had it again after I had my second child, which was very strange. And so then I had got another medication, and I've never had any problems since then.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting, but I had trouble convincing people because they couldn't figure out why would I have malaria? Where would I have been exposed to it? But fortunately, people had been coming back from Vietnam, so they at least knew what to do.
Yeah.
And so they did a blood draw, and then that substantiates the fact. I mean, they can see it in your blood. So anyway, when I came home, then first I did a training program for the Peace Corps. I did it in, New Hampshire, Dover. And that was also a very interesting experience. That was another I think that was 12 weeks, 3 months. I did a 3-month program because we did stuff at the college, basic kind of things, and then we went to a school in Quebec where where that was the school part of it, and I was like the principal, so I supervised the teachers and stuff. And that was very, very interesting, and I got to meet the kids and see myself 3 years earlier, and it was a pretty campus, but I thought, God almighty, it's hot and humid here as well. Jeez. It was nasty, but in the meantime, Dale and I kind of reconnected, because we had sort of split up when he left, and then he was in law school, and then he moved to Lubbock. So after I finished my Peace Corps training, I came back and started my master's degree. I'd had 2 professors who were very influential in my life, and one was my German teacher and one was my French teacher, and they said, Elaine, you need to get your master's now, because otherwise life will interfere and you'll never get it, and it'll be good for you to have it. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I still wasn't really tuned into the fact that I was going to be a teacher.
Right.
And so I came back and went to Texas Tech and got my master's degree, and then Dale moved to Texas because he decided that we were going to get married. So anyway, he moved to Texas, and sure enough, we did get married, and I got my master's degree, and we had the boys were both born in Lubbock, although we came back to Nebraska because he had to go back to law school in order to hold a position. And then we came here, but while I was in Lubbock, that's wherever it is, the recycling program, because when I came back to the States, two things struck me. One, I was so used to being in a black society that I felt out of place in New York City. Everybody was white, and I felt funny. I didn't feel right. I can't explain it to you, but it was a very bizarre feeling. Like, that was strange. And the other thing that struck me was the waste. I was appalled by all the waste, the cans and stuff, pop cans, things all over the place. So that was when I got the hots to recycle. So I was doing my graduate classes and trying to figure out how to get this recycling thing going. And so finally somebody agreed. I can't remember the whole thing exactly. I'm going to let that ring, except it'll be noisy on your thing.
That's okay.
I don't know what this is. Can I? Ringer muted. Okay, that helps. I didn't even know I could do that. Anyway, so I got somebody who said we could put this box, this giant box, and I got people, I called it U-Can, just with U/can. And then people put their cans in there. Their aluminum cans, their tin cans, their cans. And then we would have to take it down to, there was a place where you could take it, like a salvage yard or something like that. And then we would have to, Dale loved me for it. Anyway, so we did that for the 2 years we lived in Lubbock. And I don't know what happened to it after that. But it was a major project for me. And we have pictures of it somewhere because I was so happy when we found, because every little bit helps.
Yeah.
So that was my other own, just environmental issues. That would be it. Waste is the big one. And food. I had problems after I came back because I saw lots of people with not very much food. And it really weighed on me. So I had a problem with people not cleaning their plates.
Yeah.
And I still do to this day. It bothers me terribly to see people throw. We pretty much eat everything. And then there's leftovers. We find a way to do that too. And I can't say the same for my kids. I mean, we recycle now. And Hastings has had a recycling program for a long time. It used to be 2 teachers who did it. And they did everything on their own. And finally, the city took over. But I mean, they did that for 10, 12 years before it got going here. Hastings is kind of slow on the uptake sometimes. It was hard to move here because this is a very Republican, conservative, redneck community on the whole. Although the college was here and that made a difference. But it's still like that to a great extent. And it's hard. Which brings me to the League of Women Voters because I was interested in the League. I didn't know about the League till I came back from the Peace Corps. And I wanted to join, but I didn't because I had a baby and I was doing the classes and stuff. But I like the principles that upon which it's founded because they want to inform people so that people, and not just women, it's women who do it, but they inform everybody. And so finally, I mean, when I came here, it was kind of dead, but then they had a renaissance. There was one in Grand Island, I think. And so then after, I believe that's how it was. And then it started up again here. So I did join, and they have meetings every Friday, but they have speakers come in and talk about things. They also go into the school systems and register the 18-year-olds. And I've done that several times with them in the past. And I said to them then, so I don't know if they've done it or not, that they needed to go out to the college too, because
they have people that come.
So they do now, but they didn't originally. It was all high school, and I said you're missing out because some of those kids are not registered. So they do that. They have their forums for people to come and talk, which are really, I think, excellent. And the gal who moderates is about, God, how old is Donna? Well, she's one of the ones who did the recycling. She's just an astonishing woman. She was a 5th grade science teacher.
Oh, wow.
Both my boys had her. And she and her husband started the recycling program, but she's been, when she dies, this community is going to really feel it because she was also excellent in math, so she's a treasurer for a lot of different things too. So it's going to be a painful experience when they lose Donna.
Yeah.
I don't know, let's see. I don't know, in a few words, what the League of Voters, I don't know. Do you think we did that?
Yeah.
So I actually still belong to the League, but I don't go because their meetings are on Fridays, and usually I have class on Fridays. But because I have cancer, I had to regroup everything. And so now I teach Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but next semester I'm going back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday because it's too hard on the kids.
Yeah.
I think it's stupid. And I also think it's stupid that they make you have a 4-hour class because it used to be that the 4th hour was a lab, and they don't do lab anymore, so why do they continue to have 4 hours? Because it just it conflicts with the schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would like to do something about that? I've been trying.
I might have to.
Yeah, because there's no point, there's no reason. And I know the Spanish teacher does not want to do that because they have to have so many hours to have a full load, and because he has probably 2, I don't know if he has 2 4-year classes or 1, but it makes the difference. And if he didn't have that, he probably would have to teach another class.
Right.
And he doesn't want to do that. And I thought, so why are we inconveniencing all of these students? Because I know it messes up their schedules.
Yeah.
I know that it does. And I thought, and there's no point in it because we don't do language lab. But let me tell you, institutions are difficult to change. Churches, schools, I spent a lot of time struggling in the public schools, trying to change things there. See, education, that would be another one of my issues. That's not environmental, but that's another one. So, so I guess I joined 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I don't know. And I still, I mean, I pay my dues and stuff, and I donate to them. And I've gotten other people to join. I think Michelle joined.
Oh, really?
I don't know for sure, but I've suggested her before. She should join, but she's leaving, so we're going to lose a good one. Because there are a lot of older women like me, and we need to bring young people into it.
Right.
Because we won't all be here forever. What did I do to be involved with this group? I just joined.
Yeah.
That was it. I knew some of the women in there, but I made some good friends too because we have similar philosophies. Although, with regard to abortion, League of Women Voters doesn't take a stand.
Really?
Mm-mm. They do not take stands. They inform.
Oh, okay.
So we don't. I mean, you can't. But it was interesting to me because we share common ideas, but not totally. Some of them are opposed to abortion, some of them are pro-life. But it's still, I mean, we all get along on the basis of informing people. So I think that's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I don't know what the motor voter bill is.
That's okay.
Okay.
And you kind of talked about your teaching
Yes.
a little bit.
I decided I wanted to be a teacher after I finished. How did I do that? Oh, another thing that happened was when I came back to get my master's, I'd been teaching English as a foreign language. Oh, in Chad, I taught French, but I also in Chad, I didn't teach French at all, period. I taught English as a foreign language, not as a second language, but as a foreign language.
Oh, okay.
Totally. And that was also because these kids didn't have any, so it was starting like I said, with the bud and the bird, trying to get the th. The th is very, very difficult. So I was teaching English as a foreign language, and when I came back, I'm in Texas, and they were just starting the national trend for having, they called it TEFL at the time, teaching English as a foreign, in the schools, in the elementary schools, because we had this large, that was the beginning. I mean, Texas, it started lower down, it didn't get to, and in California, it didn't get to Nebraska for several years thereafter. But I wanted to teach English as a foreign language because I'd been doing it for 2 years.
Yeah.
And no, they wouldn't hire me because I didn't have a teaching certificate. But they hired elementary teachers who had not a clue what they were doing because they were certified. And that pissed me off because I thought that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's not logical. I know what I'm doing. I know how to teach English as a foreign language. And they don't know. They're just so that was very frustrating to me.
Yeah.
But so I went ahead and got my master's degree, and I got it in French, and I think I got it in German, French and German.
Wow.
And then we moved here, and I had decided by that time, in the course of getting my master's, that I wanted to teach, and it was because of Peace Corps, because I enjoyed it, and which was astonishing to me because my mother was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, my dad taught in law school in St. Louis, and I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. But as it turned out, I did want to be a teacher. So I think that was an interesting thing. But in Lincoln, I worked as a secretary for an insurance agency because I couldn't get a teaching job. And finally, we saw an opening here in Hastings for Spanish and English. And I thought, we're going to apply for it because at that time there was a glut of teachers. So we came out here and they hired me. My degree, mind you, is in French and German, and they hired me to teach Spanish and English. But it was because I spoke Spanish, because I'd had it in college. But I also, before we were evacuated that Christmas, I went to the Canary Islands with a bunch of volunteers, and I spoke some Spanish. And so I was the kind of leader of the pack. I'll never do that again. And but I met a Spanish guy on the boat, on the cruise, and we spoke Spanish all the time. And my Spanish improved immeasurably. And so when I went to interview for the job here, I could. The gal who interviewed me spoke Spanish, and we spoke Spanish together. And she said, "We're hiring her. She could speak Spanish." So we did, and I had an English thing, and then they required me to get some hours in English to finish off my. And so then eventually I ended up teaching French and German. So, and I started here in 1973. And I taught for 30-something years at the high school. And then I had laid out for a year, and then I went to talk to Rich Lloyd at the college, and I said, because they used to have French, and they had a French minor, and said, would you like to reintroduce it? I'll do it for you. So he said, okay. So then we did. And did I choose to? Yes, because my thing is, this is what the Peace Corps, I guess, did for my philosophy. You probably never saw a movie called Pay It Forward.
I want to say I've heard of it.
You ought to watch it.
Okay.
It's really good. That's how I feel about it. Because when I had my experience in the Peace Corps, so many people did things for me to help me and getting outside of the United States and being abroad and seeing how the world is the same but different had such an impact on me that I felt like that I needed to do the same thing. And so that's really what drove me, I guess, into teaching. Because one of the things that I strive to do, or have tried since I came here, I used to bring kids in I found this organization, and I could bring kids in for 6 weeks in the summer or 4 weeks or something like that. And I did that, and then I started taking trips with kids and sending them. And then have done J-term with the college, because I think it makes such a difference. It has such an impact on kids' lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that movie I saw that years later, and I thought, yep, that's it, Pay It Forward. Because if we did that, the world would be a better place. I like both. I like college and I like high school. I can't distinguish between the two.
Mm-hmm.
I think college is a little easier to teach because the kids are more on task.
Mm-hmm.
They're there most of them, let's say, are there to learn. In high school, they're still ultra involved with each other and trying to make an impression on the opposite sex or their little group, their clique of girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So that's a little trickier, but they're spontaneous too, more spontaneous. Yeah. They're not. College kids are more adult. Mm-hmm. They are. Would there be anything I wanted to go back and do over? Yes, I'd like to get rid of this cancer. No, I don't think so. Is there anything I'd want to do instead? Nope. Having kids and doing the Peace Corps, having kids and being married to Dale and doing the Peace Corps are the two major events in my life. And he would say the same thing. What was my favorite part of being a part of it all? I don't know. The people I've met, I guess. I've met a lot of people. And it's because I met a lot of people in the Peace Corps, but I've also, since that time, I've met a lot of people because I speak French. I've had the occasion to meet a lot of people because I speak French, it's strangely enough. Or because I speak Spanish. Not as many, but I have. My least favorite part. Oof. Well, it was hard to be away from my family in the beginning, even though I'd already done college. That was hard. But I don't know. I don't think I have a least favorite part. From what? What do you mean? From what?
Just from if there was something that happened in your life that you didn't enjoy.
I did not enjoy. I mean, I was very sad about Biafra. Very sad. I mean, I shed a lot of tears over that because when I left the school, the road was lined with the girls, and they were all ululating, and I was dying. And that was very difficult to leave those kids and not know whatever was going to happen to them. That was hard. I think probably that. And then we would see on the news, because the kids had kwashiorkor, which is a disease, it's from starvation. Mm-hmm. And seeing that on the news in Nigeria was hard. Because Dale and I are both still pretty attached to the place. I mean, we keep up with all the news and stuff. So I guess that would be my least favorite thing. I don't know, I got robbed in Chad. Somebody climbed up to the second floor of this house, and I was there with a friend. We were overnighting, and they came in the room and stole my purse.
Oh.
Yep. Well, that's a thief. They call him a thief in Nigeria. They don't say thief; they say a thief. But this was a tiny, not a very big village, and they knew I was supposed to be leaving soon, and my passport was in my purse.
Oh no.
Yep, but they returned it. It got thrown. I can't remember. They threw it somewhere where it would be found, and the passport was still in it.
Oh, that's nice then.
Yeah, at least they returned it because
Yeah.
they knew that I had to have the passport. And then, but I also lost a bunch of film that I'd taken. I took so many pictures. Oh my God. Yikes. Lots and lots of them. And then I made slides out of them.
Yeah.
So, or maybe I think I made slides in the beginning because I'd send the film home and my mom would have it developed for me.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's all. I used to show it to my high school students. I've had several students go in the Peace Corps because I encourage kids to do it. It's a great experience. It's not for everybody, and it's very different for kids now because they have cell phones, they have computers, they have access. I mean, Africa is the same but different. It's got more amenities. I mean, kids' parents go over and visit them now, and I'm like, really?
Oh.
Yeah. So, because I have one, the most recent one is living in Denver right now, and she's been home 3 years. And she did 3 years in Zambia.
Oh, neat.
And she had a very interesting experience as well. Yeah. But it was just stunning to me. She had a cell phone, she had a computer, but she did live in a little house on the compound. And for a long time, she had she didn't really, they had to get it built.
Yeah.
Because that was the natives were supposed to, the indigenous people were supposed to build for Maggie. And it took a while. So that part hasn't changed because everything takes a while in Africa. Nothing happens fast. Which was a good thing for me because I'm always like that. And I had to learn to be not so like that.
Oh, well, that would be neat.
Yes, plus no newspapers.
Yeah.
I had no papers, I had no radio, I had no TV, no distractions. I mean, they can, of course, but I didn't. And that, I found out it's really not that important. I came back and I was not interested in the news and now, oh my God, it's worse with all the terrorism.
Yeah.
But I had lost my drive to keep up with the world and know what was going on. College is like that too, though. You just don't have much to do with the outside world.
Yeah.
You live in your own little space there, which is why I wanted out, because I never felt like it was real.
Yeah.
I was there when they were doing, we had, Texas Tech was so rigid. We had to wear white on Fridays and belong to the Association of Women. Yes, you had to wear white on Fridays. You could not wear pants. Oh, certainly not jeans.
Right.
You had to be in the dorm at 10 o'clock. It was just, and they turned the lights out.
Oh.
Yeah. I did not enjoy it at all because I came from a much more relaxed environment. I didn't stay out late anyway, but I wasn't told that I couldn't.
Yeah.
So that was hard. My college years were a struggle. I got in big trouble. My sister and I lived off campus and you were not allowed to. And that was because my dad had 2 kids in school at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got an apartment and I was 21. And we got caught and they expelled my sister. They told us we had to move, the professors I was telling you about earlier, they had us live with them because I think we got caught at the beginning, maybe end of October. We lived with them until I graduated in December. And here's another irony for the administrative or educational point of view.
Okay.
I graduated in December and went in the Peace Corps. My sister was expelled for the following semester. How does that work?
Wow.
She's not forgiven me yet. She's a teacher also. But that was just, so I kind of had these issues
Yeah.
all along. I'm not very good with authority.
Well, I imagine that would be hard to go over and do everything that you did and then come back.
Well, this was before I went.
Oh.
This is before I went. And it was just, I mean, we decided that we were going to get an apartment because Daddy, it was costing him a fortune.
Yeah.
And so we did, and then some professor told on us. We don't know who. We never found out who it was. And that was quite the deal, quite the deal. But I had a few other issues in the dorm. I got before the dorm council several times because I came in, I would be doing whatever I wanted to do, and then you can't get back in because the doors are locked, but I would get back in somehow. And then, but lucky for me, my best friend was the president of the dorm council.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't, I mean, they just, that doesn't make sense to me that they would expel my sister and then let me finish and graduate.
No, that doesn't make sense.
But so many times their rules do not make sense, Maddie. What can I tell you? I have an issue with authority. I do, because I don't like people to just tell me. I want it to be reasonable.
Right.
I want it to be reasonable. And growing up, my dad always said to me, if you have a complaint, don't just gripe about it. Have a solution in hand. So that we grew up that way. We
Right.
don't just moan and groan. We say, this is how it could be better. But at the high school, whenever I did that, our principal would say, this is the way it's always been.
Oh.
That was,
Oh, that would be hard.
yes, that was unpleasant. It was very annoying, to say the most,
Yeah.
or the least, I guess. Ugh. Anyway, that's it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Now, I don't know how you're going to put this all together.